On Wednesday's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Mr. Steel Roden and your boy Big Flip Livingstone, we are back in a big way, baby, and taking a deep look at the Edmonton Oilers getting swept away in 4 games by the Colorado Avalanche. They are looking deadly. We will be taking a look at everything that just happened in this series, plus a lot more. Conn Smythe favorites, big-time bets, everything you need to know to stack a little bit of loot. Let's get this paper, baby.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite and hottest podcast. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Flip and Steel. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. And shout out to Steele for holding us down the last couple of episodes. While I've been on the IR, he's been crushing it, and I appreciate it. And we appreciate all the love out there. So continue to smash the subscribe. Show us some feedback. We're getting better every single day, baby. So thank you so much for continuing to ride with the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. On today's episode, lots to get into, breaking down what happened in the Edmonton, Colorado series, Steel. We're talking Game 4. We're talking some injuries, a little look ahead to who Colorado will be facing in the final. They have been the favorite for most of the season, Steel, and we're starting to see why. And we are going to talk about Conn Smythe favorites, maybe a couple of bets as well. Of course, we're talking bets. What am I talking about? But let's get right into it, Steel. Game 4, bit of a wild one, back and forth, lots of goals, basically what we kind of expected out of this entire series. We saw it all in a nutshell in Game 4, including some bad defensive plays from the Edmonton Oilers, questionable plays from Mike Smith, and really what we thought would be their Achilles heel was their undoing in Game 4, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we expected. It started off a little bit weird, though, in Game 4, a quick goal from Cale Makar, and that's exactly what you and I discussed in a couple episodes ago, his quick shot, but his ability to get the puck through bodies and on the net. Mike Smith had absolutely zero chance at making that save. He had like 5 bodies in front of him. Yeah. Cale Makar put a perfect shot on net, barred down past Mike Smith. So a quick start for the Colorado Avalanche, but then next thing you know, in the second period, 3 quick ones for the Edmonton Oilers who go up 3-1, and then 4-1 to start the third. And then again, 4 quick ones from the Colorado Avalanche to make it a 5-4 game. But what else do we expect? A couple of quick goals to start the second period and the third period, and the game-winning goal in overtime from Artturi Lehkonen. So we've seen this multiple times from Mike Smith now, letting quick goals in to start the frame, and those goals being, pretty much muffins, as we call it, like just very soft goals that should not be allowed to go in.
I think there's a lot of ways that we could talk about here, even one of them just being a little Artturi Lehkonen action, one of those deadline moves that not a lot of people talked about, and all of a sudden, it is an elimination game-winning goal for Artturi Lehkonen, who didn't even was able to play for the Colorado Avalanche for a number of games because of passport issues. They make them a little bit of a lesser move at the deadline, and it's paid off for them. But I mentioned to you off air that we knew, and you and I have both said for weeks leading up, that the blue line and the back end for the Edmonton Oilers, just realistically, when push comes to shove, when the pressure test comes of a really good offensive team, ergo the Colorado Avalanche, just not good enough. And Duncan Keith gets blown by on a couple plays. Mike Smith coughs the puck up a couple times. And there you go, Steele. Just not good enough. And what did we say? Also, Darnell Nurse was going to have to play a ton of beast mode minutes. And to hear him say that he's been dealing with a hip flexor since the end of the season, and he's going head-to-head with Nathan MacKinnon, who we know is basically blowing past everyone except for Connor McDavid. The fact that he was able to even still go is super impressive, but just not good enough at the end of the day.
Look, and that's exactly what a lot of these players are going through, though. Like, they're battling through injuries, and we've talked about that.
Yep.
That these injuries that going into the postseason as well, that happen during the playoffs, they're going to continue to nag at you because you're playing hard minutes, especially if you're Darnell Nurse. there's not a lot of ton of guys that Jay Woodcroft could rely on besides Nurse, like we just talked about. A couple of big mistakes from Duncan Keith, a couple of big mistakes from Evan Bouchard. So they were heavily relying on Darnell Nurse. But when you're playing such heavy minutes game in and game out, and you're dealing with a hip flexor injury that's been going on pretty much since day one of the postseason, it's definitely tough for the Edmonton Oilers going into the situation they already had on the blue line. But also, to go back to Artturi Lehkonen, this is back-to-back years where he's scored the game-winning goal in overtime for his club. A sweet feed last year from Philip Deneau past Robin Leonard to send them through to the Stanley Cup Finals. Same thing this year, a shot from the point, a little deflection, a little controversy on it, but the stick was clearly below the bar. And what a complete finish from Artturi Lehkonen to send the Colorado Avalanche to the Stanley Cup Finals.
And I like that you really raised a good point, because this is the conference final. This is going to be a situation where many, many players are playing through injury. And we know Leon Draisaitl was also playing with an injury. That was clear. He wasn't 100%. And the fact that he was able to still put up, the second most points in the playoffs, just right behind McDavid by one, is absolutely impressive as well. And I think as much as, the Colorado Avalanche clearly were the superior team, let's give credit due for the Edmonton Oilers just for getting there, but clearly just not good enough now. And when I'm saying not good enough, that's on the heels of Connor McDavid putting up 33 points, 32 points from Leon Draisaitl, a great postseason from Evander Kane, a great postseason from Zach Hyman, just not good enough on the back end. You talked about injuries, though, Steele, and we will highlight some important ones for the Colorado Avalanche coming up right around the break, because they will be facing some serious ones when it comes to going up against either the New York Rangers or Tampa Bay Lightning. We don't know that yet. We also don't know who will be the Conn Smythe winner. Steele and I will take a look at a couple of names, maybe sprinkle a bet or two in as well. But I want to tell you about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's almost impossible for your local auto chain parts store to have everything that you need. Don't go through the intimidating questioning or the long waits in lines by waiting behind the counter when you can go to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more on the same parts from a chain or auto part dealership when you can go to a family-owned business like Rock Auto, serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They're helping out Steele and I keep the whips mint, and we appreciate it. They have everything that we need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even the new line of carpets. Everything is fresh to death inside and out. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for all of your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us section so they know that Steele and I sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck will ever need at rockauto.com.
Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. And real quick, we have an important favor to ask you out there. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about our listeners like you and make the Locked On Podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started, and it won't take very long. And everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, that is again lockedonpodcast.com/survey. And thank you so much for your help. Flip, like you mentioned off the top of the show, a lot of injuries going to the Stanley Cup Finals. A lot of players dealing with injuries from the start of postseason to the Western and Eastern Conference Finals. We've seen over the last couple of games, guys that have left the Colorado Avalanche, Darcy Kemper and Nazem Kadri still out of the lineup. But even without them, Colorado was able to get the job done. What do you think are the chances for the Colorado Avalanche? It looks like Nazem Kadri is going to be out for the rest of the postseason. That just looks like it is. I believe he had surgery to repair a broken thumb from that Evander Kane hit from behind in Game 3. Darcy Kemper is still out of the lineup, but is working his way and battling his way back into the lineup. He has skated on optional practice days, but what do you think their chances are going into the Stanley Cup Finals if both those guys, well, obviously if Kadri isn't coming back, but if Darcy Kemper isn't able to start the series?
Yeah, it was looking like I think Kemper was actually close enough to be back because it sounded like he was the backup for Pavel Francouz in game 4. So I think Darcy Kemper's health is probably there. I'm thinking that he might even be good enough to start game 1 of the Stanley Cup final, but I don't know if they even throw him in there. I think Pavel Francouz has been good enough to be the starter right now, and I don't know if you want to throw him off his mojo. But Nazem Kadri, obviously not being in the lineup for the Colorado Avalanche, he's just that kind of a glue guy. Although we know he can take away from that competitiveness by being a bit of a hothead, you need a guy like Kadri in there when the minutes get dirty and get gritty. But I think everything that we just saw from the Colorado Avalanche prove that the rest of their forward group can step up. I think that will they really miss Kadri? Yes. Will it matter in terms of the production on the ice? I'm going to go with maybe not, but it depends who they go up against, Steele, because I'm thinking if they go up against the New York Rangers, and we know we record ahead of time, we know that this Rangers-Tampa series still has some games to be played in it, but at the end of the day, Steele, I think that if they go up against a team like the New York Rangers with all that forward depth, they might start to miss Nazem Kadri a little bit more than they might have against going up against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And people might start going, Flip, what are you talking about back-to-back Stanley Cup champs? The back-to-back Stanley Cup champs were on the ropes the other night when the New York Rangers had a 2-goal lead in Game 3. And I'm not saying they were lucky to get out of that game. I'm just saying the New York Rangers are giving them a run for their money. So when we're talking about injury, Steele, the Darcy Kemper one I'm going to say is not as a factor as the Nas one. But both are obviously something you keep your eye on because at the end of the day, if Darcy Kemper is already ready to come back and they're still riding with Pavel Francouz, I think that says a lot about what they might be thinking in the offseason for a guy in Kemper who is a free agent.
Hey, I completely agree with you on the Nazem Kadri take. I think if Colorado is, to end up going up against the New York Rangers, they're going to miss Kadri a lot more with how great the Rangers' depth has been this postseason with the guys they got at the deadline as well. The physicality of his game is also going to be a factor because we're starting to see that from their bigger guys. Like Jacob Trouba has been all over the ice, getting after every single person that comes towards him. Ryan Reeves getting the mixture as well. Keandre Miller on the back end too. A lot of their big guys are finally getting into the physicality of the playoffs because that's what their opponents have kind of brought them into.
And what did you bring up the other day? When Tampa goes down, they get gritty. They get dirty. So these games are about to really ratchet up in physicality, and we know that's Nas's bread and butter. So to miss a guy that plays like that, like you said, it could be even more critical at this juncture, but we'll see what happens. I just don't want to count out the Tampa Bay Lightning just yet is what I was going to throw out there.
Yeah, and you can't count out the Tampa Bay Lightning, but also if they're able to come back in this series and get back to the Stanley Cup Finals, they're also missing Braden Point right now. And over the last couple of games, it looks like Andrei Vasilevsky has actually fallen back to earth and is somewhat human. And it looks like the New York Rangers have kind of exposed some of the holes in his game, but it's also like the Tampa Bay Lightning have not been playing their best at the best of their abilities as well. So it's not all Vasilevsky's fault, but they've got a couple of injuries to their lineup as well. Some of their guys have not been producing, but again, the New York Rangers are just firing on all cylinders right now.
Most definitely. And to bring it full circle back to the Colorado Avalanche and their injuries, I think something that I wanted to mention was when Sam Girard went down with a very serious, sternum injury.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be something that might affect the Colorado Avalanche's depth on the blue line. And look at what happens. Devin Taves has stepped up and has just played absolutely sensational. I want to give both of us some credit because run the tape back to the start of this series. And I said, down that lineup, they're going to need some blue liners to step up. And Devin Taves has been an absolute beast. And, to talk about Avs injuries, that Girard one was one that I thought was maybe going to play in the favor of the Edmonton Oilers or whoever they were going up against. And just, again, testament to the rest of the Avs. They look like they have heard the chirps of they shouldn't have been the Stanley Cup favorites all year. They're flexing their muscle now. And I would say whoever comes out of the East will be the underdog against the Colorado Avalanche just because of how good Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Devin Taves, some of these guys, the big guns are firing for the Colorado Avalanche, and we know that's what you need to get through 4 rounds of NHL postseason hockey. Steel. I'm excited to talk a little bit about Conn Smythe because Makar, McKinnon, those are the 2 guys in the mix for that award right now.
Look, McKinnon's been holding on to the comments over the last 4 years about him not being able to get past the second round, him not showing up in the second round. He's been holding it down. He's been grinding, and he finally gets his opportunity in the Stanley Cup Finals very, very soon. He's just waiting for who his opponent is going to be, and he doesn't care who it's going to be. He just wants it to happen as fast as possible. But you're right. The Conn Smythe Trophy, the odds are looking juicy right now, especially for some of those Colorado Avalanche players. But I also think this is an opportunity to take a look at some of the New York Rangers players as well. And even though they're not solidified in the Stanley Cup Finals, I think this might be the prime opportunity to start doing some research. And if you go with some of our gut feelings, I have the Rangers in 6. So that's also an opportunity to take a closer chance at the Conn Smythe Trophy futures for the New York Rangers players. But before you make those bets, I got to let you know about our sponsor, BetOnline.net. They are your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's NBA championship matchups, NHL hockey conference finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA, UFC, and boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and much more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe and the follow button. And once you do, you'll get the latest episodes of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as they're available every day, Monday to Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Flip, what do you say? What do we talk about those Conn Smythe Trophy odds right now?
Let's talk Conn Smythe, pal, because at the end of the day, we know a couple of the guys on the Colorado Avalanche, they're the favorite. But like Steele said, you're going to get some decent odds on some players on the New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning just based on the fact that we don't know who's going through yet. So, yes, you're hedging your bets a little bit, but like Steele said, get to sprinkling because there's still some opportunities to make some money here. So make sure you're still tapped into this show every single day, like Steele said, Monday to Friday. But before we talk about, our favorites for it, because I think it's clear who that is, Mika Zibanejad, Cale Makar, and Nathan McKinnon, those got to be the 3 favorites. I'm taking a look down that list a little bit, Steele, for some value, because if a guy like Gabriel Landeskog has a beast mode final, he will be right in that mix. And I need to give this guy some credit. 8 goals, 9 assists, plus 14, averaging 21 minutes a night. And he is winning 58% of his faceoff draws, Steele, and just being an absolute stud at both ends of the rink. So if a guy like Landeskog can have a great final, don't write off some of these other guys who are lurking in the weeds. Adam Fox as well, another name, has a beast mode final. If they get there, there's value to be had. But realistically, Steele, I think the money to be made is in those top 3 guys. So why don't we talk about them? And realistically, all 3 right now are right in the mix, in my opinion. Zibanejad, Makar, and McKinnon. I don't know what you think about that.
For me in the mix right now, it's obviously the top 2 guys, Cale Makar at plus 180 right now and Nathan McKinnon at plus 200. Those are the top 2 guys because Shesterkin's in the 3rd spot right now at plus 800. A little bit of distance between the second spot and the 3rd spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some valuable players that you can look at for the New York Rangers. Like I said, Shesterkin at plus 800. You mentioned it off the top. Mika Zibanejad at plus 2,000 right now is very intriguing to me because he's had an absolute stellar postseason for the New York Rangers. 11 goals so far in the postseason, over 20 points, so many power play points. He's leading his team right now. So that is a guy that I'm looking to sprinkle at least a couple of bucks on, maybe even throw a tenner on him. But that's someone I'm looking for. But without a doubt in my mind, I'm definitely putting money on Cale Makar. I think it's his trophy to lose at this point in the season. Yeah. This guy, I just read a fascinating stat. It's been over 3 decades, 2 or 3 decades that a defenseman has put up 9 points in a 4-0 sweep over a team. And he's done it twice so far in this postseason. The first against the Nashville Predators and now against the Edmonton Oilers. So this guy is just an absolutely ridiculous defenseman. At this point, he's got to be the best. I know the other day I just said he's right up there with Victor Hedman, but every single game, it's like this guy just continues to prove the point why he is the best defenseman in the game right now.
Yeah, and I knew we needed to spend a section of today's episode talking about Cale Makar. 23 years old. The guy is from Calgary. So at the end of the day, the Flames, the Calgary city, still comes back to burn Edmonton in the end because Calgary has, their number in a number of other ways aside from, getting dusted in the Battle of Alberta. A little of a shout out there to the Calgary fans. But I wanted to say something as well because I saw this on TV earlier. And speaking of impressive stats, how about the fewest games to 50 career playoff points? You have Bobby Orr in 39 games. You have Brian Leetch in 41 games. And right there behind those two Hall of Famers, Cale Makar in 49 games. The third fastest player to 50 points in their career in the postseason. It's a full stop right there. Bobby Orr and Brian Leetch are two of the best blue liners to ever do it. And we talked about Bobby Orr changing the game. Cale Makar is changing the game. He's changing the way defensemen play it and the way that he carries that puck steal, the poise, the confidence, the time he takes. He looks around. That throws defenses off. They don't know what to do with a guy with that much skill and the patience. 5 games. I believe did he have 4 points in game 4?
He had 5 points in game 4.
5 points in an elimination game at 23 years old, and you've done it all season long. If you haven't taken notice about Cale Makar, you've been slipping because you're witnessing something truly historic. And aren't the Colorado Avalanche just absolutely lucky to have the talent that they have at both ends of the rink? Because Cale Makar, at what is it? Did you say he's the favorite at plus 180 or plus 170?
Plus 180 right now.
That is the guy you should be looking at because that still is a pretty decent odd. He looks absolutely sensational still. But like you said, there's lots of value up and down that board because he has a little bit of a quiet final. You never know.
And just to keep continuing talking about his game, look what he was able to do to Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, the fastest guy in the NHL, coming down the wing.
Yeah,
just so much poise and so much calmness to his game. He's not panicking, and he's just keeping him out to the outside. And I know that Connor McDavid likes to put, his little move right there, puts the puck under the stick, goes over the opponent's stick, trying to get a little wrister off, and just the calmness to his game. Not panicking, getting the puck into the corner and not giving McDavid an inch to get by him. But it's also his offensive ability and his body language to fool his opponents into where he's going. Many times I saw that he would walk the blue line and his body language is showing that he's going to pass out left. Yes. And he just comes right back out right, feeds over to Mikko Rantanen, who either puts it on net or is looking for another player looking for a pass and opening seam to make that play and hopefully get a goal on the power play. But he's just absolutely incredible watching him every single time he steps on the ice. The poise he has on the blue line, his body language able to fool guys out there. It's honestly just incredible.
And like I said, with that kind of talent on the blue line, and then you have guys like McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, and others up front, this team is going to be hard to beat. And the testament truly to how good they are on defense and offense is the ability for a guy like Francouz, who, let's be honest, is a backup for a reason most nights. And we know he's played serviceable. Let's not take anything away from his performance. But the reason that they're able to just intangibly they had Kemper on basically healthy enough to play. Let's leave Francouz in there because we trust the guys out in front of him still. That is one of those abilities of your team that you can't put enough of a value on. Look, the Rangers, the Lightning, whoever it is, they're going to be in tough because if Cale Makar continues to get his, Nathan McKinnon continues to get his, this team is going to be very hard to stop.
I don't see them stopping in any way, and that's why those two guys are the favorites for the Conn Smythe Trophy. So look at those top two guys, but again, look down, look a little bit down at the player list.
Little sprinkle.
Shesterkin plus 800, Mika Zibanejad plus 2,000. Even a guy that I didn't mention, Chris Kreider at plus 4,000. If he can have a big finals as well, because he's right up there for the point leaders for the New York Rangers. That is also another guy to keep an eye on. But just remember, a lot of players that could end up winning this Conn Smythe Trophy, but the top two are definitely the favorites right now, Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. Thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every day. For your second listen, though, check out Locked On NHL. From the first round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Again, just like this podcast right here. So if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. You won't miss out. You don't want to miss out on all the content. And once you hit the subscribe and follow button, you'll get the latest episodes of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast every single day, Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Stanley Cup Finals right around the corner. We're just waiting for the Eastern Conference Finals to settle out. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.